understand.
Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa.
Cambodia,
Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa.
deep in the soil, the love of the land. Oh, how my heart longs to be there again. Like the days of my dreams, and the nights alone by your streams. Feel the magic, I feel the peace. With the lions, wildebeest. With the eagles flying high.
I want to take you to Mbale, and I want to take you to Arcole, and I want to take you to Uganda, and I want to take you to Usoga.
There goes my soul, there goes my mind. All the beauty you could ever find. My motherland, oh my motherland, my motherland. Deep in the forest, across the land, I hear the calling, I understand. Like this song of my soul, how my story will unfold. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, Uganda. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, Uganda. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, Angola. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, Mali. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, Lugora. I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, my motherland. Oh, my motherland. I feel the magic, I feel the peace on the savannas, the mountain peaks, like the great days of old, when the Nile overflowed, abundance across the land, and the people down hand in hand.
Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa. Chenda, nende chirisa.
Deep in the forest, across the land, I hear the calling, I understand. Like the song of my soul, how my story will unfold. Jenna, in the tidis. Jenna, in the tidis. In the tidis.
I want to take you to Mbale, and I want to take you to Arcole, and I want to take you to Uganda, and I want to take you to Usoga.
Well, good evening to you, good afternoon to all you people out there, you wonderful people, and welcome to this special program of the Pan-African Movement. Today we are focusing on African liberation. Of course, you know, African Liberation Day is celebrated on the 25th of May each year in several parts of the world. And so, as usual, the Pan-African Movement would have had its gathering on the Merriman's Mall, but because of the COVID-19 situation, we have to thank Mrs. E. Blackman and the management of Channel 9 for allowing us to get to you through the medium of television. And so this afternoon, this is the second program that we're going to be having. Last time we had Mr. Gideon, and this afternoon we have two special people, Sister Waziro, Esther Selassie, and Dr. Sampson Asodu, who is Ugandan. And so we're focusing basically this afternoon on the history of East and Central Africa and in the context of culture and liberation. But before we get into the discussion, it's normal for us to invite our ancestors here, and so we're going to pour a simple libation to begin our program this afternoon. And so we hope that you stay tuned, and as we edify you in this discussion on the history of East and Central Africa. And so in the simple libation this afternoon, we're going to be using water again to pour to our ancestors. We invite their presence to be among us, those who have suffered and have passed, but we continue to ask for their guidance because we know that they have passed and that they would have achieved wisdom and that they can guide us from their experiences. And so you are invited among us to continually protect and guard over us, even to the young ones who have passed, who have transcended. You too, in the spirit realm, can be guides to us who are still here and who are still facing the travails of this world. And so all of our ancestors from all parts of the world, we invite your presence.
Ashe.
Welcome you.
Ashe.
Ashe. And so, our guests this afternoon, we'll have a major presentation by Dr. Asodu, and then Sister Waziro will take the discussion forward, and we will be part of this grand occasion of edifying ourselves about where we've come from and the links between culture and our development in this part of the world. Over to Dr. Well, thank you for being here,
Thank
ladies
you.
and gentlemen.
Thank you for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
All right, so Sister Waziro, you want to...
Well, I would just love to continue along the trend as he explained to our audience, our viewers shortly, that we will have a major presentation from you. And so, Doctor, help me with the pronunciation, please. I'm sure there are others who would love to get it right. So,
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. And more so, Pan-African team of Guyana, and the rest of the viewers in Guyana. I would like to bring to your attention that Africa is watching live as we are having a discussion. More so, majesties and queens of Africa. So we are not alone here as in our discussion, but everybody in Africa, especially the high-level team, is currently watching, and I will bring to your attention the list of majesties that are online right now listening. So to this, taking you through the program, I will be trying to answer the question, who are Africans? Because that is the question that we have always tried to look left, right to answer. And we don't know who Africans are. And that is why we are never at all to ourselves. Right? So, Africa in the first place is the birthplace, according to history, is the birthplace of humankind, and knowing its history is very essential, right? And to understand the global society that is grown around it. So African history is so challenging that even researchers find it very hard. But to that, it is even very cheap, easy to find it. And where will you find it? African history is engraved in rocks. African history can only be interpreted by Africans.
true.
So the archaeologists who have gone down, they find it very difficult, and they have failed to interpret that history. So based on that, Africa has limited documented history, right? Documented history because of interpretation of what our ancestors engraved for us to catch up with, right? So African written history started during the rise of Egyptian civilization. That is where the history started, the documented one. And that was around 4th millennium BC, those decades ago. And in succeeding centuries follows the development and the diversities, right? of societies beyond the Nile. There is something that I want to talk about the Nile. The Nile is one of our life that is attached to Africans. Why? Because first of all, Africans, according to the documented history, came out from Ethiopia, from Egypt. So why did they move south? It is because of the Nile. The Nile is the vein stream of our lifestyle. So coming out from Egypt or Ethiopia, we Africans were following the Nile as they were pastoralists. As they are pastoralists, they followed up the Nile because of pasture. In the north, it is a semi-desert. So as you come along the Nile, there is always pasture. So most people followed the Nile River and its tributaries. So the recent history in my tribe, I come from Iteso tribe in eastern Uganda. So in our recent history, we came from Abyssinia. So when we left Abyssinia, we followed the Abyssinia, that is Egypt. I mean Ethiopia.
Yeah, Ethiopia.
Yes.
So that the
So-
people who came.
Around those islands, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Our ancestors kept giving us this information, right? That as they were on those highlands, they looked towards south, they saw greener pasture. So when they saw greener pasture, that is how they kept being attracted to move, because they were looking after cows, right? So now, as they kept moving, other people kept staying back. And who are those ones? The elderly. So the elderly kept staying back. So as we continued moving, following those tributaries, in other history, it is stated that the other tribes followed the West Nile side, those tributaries going to the west side, north and other areas. But our tribe followed the east. So you know what happens is, as you get into other environment, the culture changes, right? So those things kept moving. If it was like today, it would be easy to pick a call and say, hey guys, how are you down there? But by then, it was a little bit hard, right? So as they kept moving, they kept leaving people behind. So they proceeded up to the current Lake Turkan, because those tributaries lead up to those water bodies. So as we got down there, some people stayed there, and that is why you'll find the tribe called Turkana in Kenya, right? Now, as we kept moving, others went east, others went west. So we went on the western side. Now, when we reached eastern Uganda, others stayed back. And then they said, they called themselves, they called themselves Karamojong, meaning the elderly have become tired. So they stayed back there.
Okay.
Up to now, the name is there. And that was around 16th century. So now for us, the elders said, you will go and die there as you continue moving. And that is why we are called Iteso. Because the dead person is Ates. Right? So the tribe is Iteso.
Yes.
And that is the little bit about how the Nile brought us out. So the same applies to others. But we have two major ethnic groups in Africa, the Bantu and the Nilo-Hamites. The Nilo-Hamites, based on the history, they followed the Nile. You get it?
Yeah.
And when you look at their culture, it's very close. So meaning there is a close attachment. So when the Karimojong speak, I understand fluently. When the Turkan speak, I can understand. right? When the Maasai speak, I can understand. When other tribes along the Nile banks speak, I pick some words. Now, what was amazing was that when the Igbo speak, there are some words that I pick. The Igbo in Nigeria, right? So when the Igbo says beer, it means come. And the same thing is what we say as Iteso, beer. You get it? So there is a similarities. So you will find Okui, the name Okui in our tribe, and you will find the name Okui in Western Uganda, in Western Africa, and that is in Igbo tribe. So meaning there is a link as to how we came out, right? So that history is of 16th century, which was a recent one. Now, how did the people live? Why did the people leave North Africa in that history, based on the documented? Is because there was pressure. There was pressure from Arab world because they were coming into Africa. So there was that fight in between. Now others were saying we are going to save ourselves down there as we look for pasture. But others stayed back. You get it? So now as you continue moving, you will find that at the end, the environment where you have gone has changed your culture. And that means the way you name things is also changing. The way the same thing is named the other side is not the same. It has changed, right? So that is briefly how Africans came down. So now along the coast, in the East African coast, during that time, there was that pressure from the Arab world, and there was pressure from the religion, because Christianity was the first religion that came in with Islam along the coast. The Arabs brought in the Islam. So that now gave pressure to other traditional religion or beliefs, right? Up to today, we're still having that pressure. Now, by that time, during that movement, you will find that there were leaders. It was not just moving because we are moving, we are looking for pasture and so on. No. The forefathers will identify a person who is strong in war, in defending, right, to lead the team. Now, when they choose the person, that person leads the team to go forward. So, and everybody kept moving with a leader until now we formed the kingdoms. There were kingdoms and there were empires, right? So in the empire, you'll find there are different, like for example, if I brought it down to Guyana, you'll find for like Amerindian community or indigenous people. They have different ethnic groups. Waiwai, Wapishana, Makushi, Arawak, all those. But they are all managed by one ministry. You get it? Okay. So that is how the kingdom or the empire kept forming up. And we had some of those pre-colonial empires that existed at that time as the groups kept spreading, right? So we have a Juran Empire, we have the Meat Empire, Adal Sultanate, Alodia, Wasangali Sultanate, Kingdom of Nri, Nok culture, Mali Empire, Songhai Empire, Benin Empire, Oyo Empire, Kingdom of Londa, Penuyaka, Ashanti Empire, Ghana Empire, Mosi Kingdoms, Mutapa Empire, Kingdom of Mapugundwe Empire, Kingdom of Sines, Kingdom of Senar, Kingdom of Salom, Kingdom of Baal, Kingdom of Saya, Kingdom of Zimbabwe, Kingdom of Congo, Empire of Kabu, Kingdom of Ife, Ancient Carthage in North Africa, Numidia, Mauritania, and Aksumite Empire. So those were existing empires by then, right? And then at its peak, prior to colonialism, it is estimated that, based on the documented history, Africa had more than 10,000 states, which states were not like boundaries that we have now, right? The states whereby you communicate to the others and then you go in, right? But not having a passport and so on, right, at that time. So, which means there was that link, that connection between each and every one. So, how these empires were formed, because after settling and say, okay, I think we cannot move further anymore, let's stay here. Then, of course, you now start building defense, right? And establish yourselves. And the kingdoms, queens, and so on, right? So, after, that was post-colonial Africa, after the colonization. During that time, the Berlin Conference was held, right? And that was around 1800. There was a Berlin Conference that was put in place, where now they said, okay,
you take this.
You take this, take this.
Divide up.
Right? So now, that conference had no consultation with the other empires to say, okay, much as you are there, but we are dividing you. Right? But, so, that gave Africa another pressure when that came in. Meanwhile, the only country or state that was never colonized was Ethiopia. And who resisted that? It was King Menelik II. Right? So he defended from Italian pressure. That is how he managed to control Ethiopia. Up to today, Ethiopia is never colonized. Right? So, after colonization, African countries after that, when they divided, included Algeria, Angola, Benin. There are 55. I did some time back, I did some research saying, okay, how many countries you know about Africa? Most people tell me Nigeria, right? Because Nigeria is well known in film industry, right? So most people talk about Nigeria. But Africa is a continent, and it has 55 countries, and of which those countries, Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cabo Verde, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Comoros, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Republic of the Cote d'Ivoire, Djibouti, Egypt, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Eswatini, which was formerly Swaziland, Ethiopia, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, and then Guinea-Bissau, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mali, Mauritania, Mauritius, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sao Tome and Principe, Senegal, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Africa, Southern Sudan, which is the youngest country in the world, I think, Sudan, Tanzania, Togo, Tunisia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Those are the 55 countries, different countries in Africa, which was as a result of the Berlin Conference, right? So, getting down to where we are focusing at today, that is East and Central Africa. So according to the theory, the recent African origin of modern humans, the mainstream position held within the scientific community, right? All humans originated from somewhere around East Africa. That is based on the documented history. So, and that is the Horn of Africa. And this place had kingdoms before then. Because remember, there was pressure from Arabs who were dealing with trade. And the first region that were, Arabs introduced trade was East Africa, along the coast. Right? So there was a kingdom of Punt. That was 2400 BC. Right? And Punt is referred as land of God. So the exact location of Punt is not very clear, just like how we are not sure where is this Garden of Eden. People are not sure where it is. Right? So where did King Solomon keep the covenant, the gold mines? People are tracing, but where is it? Right? So, like I said earlier, African history is on engraved rocks. And then there was a kingdom of the Mede. That was around 9800 BC. I mean 980 BC. And then Aksumite Empire around 80 BC. Right? Swahili Coast. Most people know Swahili as a language, but that is a kingdom. Right? So that was around 50 BC. So the Swahili Coast is a coastal area of the Indian Ocean in East Africa, inhabited by the Swahili people. There are Swahili people there. So it includes Sofala, that is Mozambique, Mombasa, that is around Kenya, Gere, Pete Highlands, Lamu, Malindi, and Kilwa. So that is where the Swahili people were staying in that time, right? So after that, those were the few ancient kingdoms that existed based on the documented history. After the during the Stone Age, we had the Bazin, Kingdom of Bazin, Kingdom of Belgian, Kingdom of Jarin, Kingdom of Kita, and of Nagash and Tankish. That was in the 9th century. Those were the kingdoms that existed at that time. Right? And so, according to the history, the Beja people were the ones who were the majority of that population. And the Kunama people called the Bazin, sometimes Baden or Bazen, who practiced the traditional religion. So there were people with different beliefs and so on, right? Due to the influence of Islam and Christianity, that disorganized those kind of beliefs, right? And the Empire of Kitara, also known as Bunyoro Kitara, which is now existing in Uganda. It is in Uganda right now, Bunyoro Kitara. So that one also existed in the 1300, around 1300 period. So Sultana of Mogadishu, around 10th century. Kilwa Sultan, that was 15th, 13th century. And Kingdom of Madrid Bari, 1890 century. 1890. And Ethiopian Empire, that had Zagwe dynasty and Solomonic dynasty. That was in the north. Right? So where Emperor Haile Selassie, right? Haile Selassie comes from, who was overthrown by coup d'etat by the communist Dag. That was around he ruled from 1270, that period, right, until he was overthrown. So throughout that period, there was pressure. As these kingdoms existed, there was pressure, right? So Sultan of Ifat, Kingdom of Bunyoro, that is in 1300 in western Uganda. And then Kingdom of Buganda, the same 1300. Kingdom of Rwanda, Kingdom of Kafa, Ankole Kingdom, still in Uganda. So those were the kingdoms that existed prior to, within that Stone Age period, right? Now in the modern period, we have Senar Sultan that existed from 1502 to 1821. We have Kingdom of Burundi, which existed from 1530 to 1966. We have Sultan of the Galendi, that was in the 17th century to 19th century.
But all of these are in East Africa? Or?
Yes, these are all in East Africa. So these are all in East Africa.
Okay.
So I'm centered in East Africa for now. Okay. Then when we have another program, we shall talk about other regions. So Sultan of Hausa, that was in 1734 up to present. We have that one in... and then Majoritin Sultan, that is 18th century up to the 20th century. So we have Kingdom of Goma, 19th century. Toro Kingdom in Uganda from 1830 up to present. It is still there. So Mbokane Kingdom, that is 1875 to 1889. Kingdom of Jima, 1830 to 1932. Kingdom of Goma, 1840 to 1902. Sultane of Hobyo, 1880s to 1902. Davish State, 1896 to 1920. So Kingdom of Karagwe, 19th century up to 1916. So those were the kingdoms that existed at that time.
So
before
what caused the change? You have these kingdoms occurring in different periods.
Yes.
What would have resulted in the evolution and dissolution of those?
Yes, that is exactly what I was going to answer.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
if I might say, I think you already answered the question.
Exactly.
You did say what resulted in all of the rise of those kingdoms. He spent the last 10 minutes or so telling us that.
Yes. So these kingdoms come and fall due to pressure.
Okay.
Yes. So in that pressure, you'll find that at the end, this one is dissolved, and then another one takes over that area, right? Of course, external pressure as well. So whereby East Africa, after the Berlin Conference, came to Eastern Africa. There is a difference between East and Eastern Africa. Eastern Africa has 19 countries after colonization, right? 19 countries. That is Burundi, Comoros, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Reunion, Rwanda, Seychelles, Somalia, Somaliland, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Those are Eastern African countries. But the East African countries are those ones that came together as a community to agree on certain political, economic, and social terms, right? And that is Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Southern Sudan. They came to form a bloc, right? So that is how the history came about, and the dissolution of some other kingdoms because of external and internal pressure. which ended up having a lot of things changed, right from political, social, economic, and religion, right? So when you talk about religion, you know what's going on, right? So you'll find that the traditional beliefs were dissolved because Christianity and Islam came on board. And that one was mashed down. At the same time, there was pressure, right? Political pressure, whereby the traditional systems or management political systems were abandoned in order to adopt the modern systems due to caused by the colonialists, and say, okay, I want you to stay in this corner, right? And by then, you will find that constitutions were not allowing some other traditional monarchies to exist, and that mashed completely other monarchies or other kingdoms. You get the point? So, and that is how we are now having only a few kingdoms existing, right? So, when we look at the Central Africa, that was East Africa. We look at the Central Africa. So Central Africa sometimes referred as Middle Africa, and defines a portion of African south of Sahara Desert, east of Western Africa and west of the Great Rift Valley. It straddles the equator and is drained largely by the Congo River system. Which Congo River system, if you connect from the beginning when I talked about the River Nile, Congo River goes to River Nile, right? So Central Africa has a long history of human occupancy, with the first writing in the region dating back to 300 BC. 3000 BC. So around 1000, the Bantu migrants had reached the Great Lakes region. So as I told you earlier on, that we had two ethnic groups that went down. That is the Nilotics and then the Bantu. So meaning the Bantu had gone to the central at that time. So halfway through millennium, the Bantu had also settled as far as south as the countries of what are now Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So one of the major events that occurred in the central during the period was the establishment of the Kanem Empire. So as the people keep on migrating in searching for pasture, you'll find that they settle and establish the empire. To establish the empire means you have to defend yourself. You have to group yourself and build the defense. And that is how these empires and kingdoms came on board. Right? So, and for your information, the earliest alphabet in the region originally included hundreds of phonetic signs. Before the 26-letter word alphabet came on board. So meaning the origin of alphabet was somewhere in Africa. And all that information is engraved by our foreparents, who did it to teach us, to communicate to us in that form of engraving in the rocks, so that we can understand and move on.
I need to say those particular carvings or engravings prove that our ancestors were visionaries.
Yes.
They know some invaders would come along and look to burn up books and destroy as much as possible in their path. Because we know they even tried to destroy some of those engravings or carvings, but they weren't successful. So it highlights the greatness of our ancestors, and it serves as a tool for our liberation.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. So if only we understood and know ourselves much better as Africans, then we would really look for where to find those kinds of engraved information and then interpret it.
Well, so far, I think everything you said, um, even though our forebearings spread along the Nile, on modern day English, they would say migrate.
Migrate, yes.
They would say migrate.
Yes.
But they just kept spreading out and moving on. It also highlights the importance of repatriation,
Yes.
as mainly Rastafari would love to use that word, but going back home generally, because they knew the connection and the importance of the Nile to us, and they know the importance of the geographic and our genes, so they do everything in their power to keep us out of that space. And as part of our liberation, you have highlighted the importance of us returning to our motherland and making that reconnection.
Yes, that is very true, and that is why if you listen to the first song that was played before the program, you'll find that that song has a lot of information. That song sends a message. There is where the person mentioned tender chiriza, meaning if you can only believe. And then he kept emphasizing, if I can go to my motherland, that motherland, right? So that's why I specifically picked that song to play.
I must say at this time,
Yes.
I think it's a blessing, and Rastafari would usually say bless up. I have a daughter
Yes.
with that name. For me to be here today at this liberation time, because if it wasn't for this COVID-19 thing, the Rastafari community would have been celebrating maybe 5 days or so, commemorating this important time.
Yeah.
Why I feel special too, I must say thank you to Dr. Long for having me here and the PANAF team.
Yes.
It's because at this anniversary of, it's special to Rastafari, 25th of May, we don't take it lightly.
Okay.
Also the 5th of May, this kind of aura starts from the 5th of May,
Yeah.
which is Ethiopia Liberation Day, and then the 25th of May is All African Liberation Day, which commemorates the formation of the Organization of African Unity that we know today as African Union.
Yes.
I was talking about the specialness. You're from Central Africa.
East
I'm
Africa.
you're from East Africa.
Yes.
You're from East Africa.
Yeah.
I've never been to Africa. I've never been to Ethiopia, but I feel as though my foot never came off the shores, because I have found many of my traits that are natural to me are linked to the Ethiopian or African people, as you would say today.
Okay.
But at this particular time, I focus and get my philosophy from Ethiopia. Rastafari do. And you're from East Africa. At this time, over 31 or more than 30 African leaders were focused in Addis Ababa.
Yeah.
It's about, I think, 57 years ago. So I know the leaders were there, and so the countries, all the members of the countries had their thoughts there too in Addis Ababa, because they all knew that something great was going to happen. And so I would like to point that out.
Okay.
I feel good that we are here today.
Yes.
Before you-
Bringing the light and liberation to our people at this.
Yes.
Before you continue with the development of the history and so on, the one thing I want to point out, because a lot of argument surrounds religion, particularly in this part of the world.
Yes.
You mentioned Christianity and Islam. A lot of people seem to believe that the original religion of Africa is Islam.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, go again, to explain to them again what you said, so that they can be clear in their minds that Islam came about because of invasion.
Well, I've known for a long time, quite a few of us have known for a long time that Islam is just the flip side of Christianity. And I know some people say Christianity began in Africa, but we didn't call it Christianity. They're the ones who came and saw us living our lives and doing our things, and they said we were Christians. We never called ourselves Christian.
Yeah, so thank you for the question there. So as I said earlier on, Islam was brought by Arabs. So during that period of time when they were doing trade in East Africa and North Africa.
What about the slaughter that the Crusades? They wiped out the whole.
That is where the pressure came in, right? So during that time when they were doing trade with the East African, the Swahili people, and then other inhabitants of along the coast, right? So they had Islam, which gave pressure because a lot of things were conditioned. In if we are doing trade, there are certain things that come in, and simply because they were coming for Ivory Coast, gold, and other things. Ivory and other things, right? So, and rubber, all those raw materials, minerals, and so on. So there were some other conditions that they put in place that forced people to make an adjustment, right? So which gave pressure to other traditional beliefs to be erased.
Practices.
Yes. So, however, there still other traditional practices that are ongoing.
Yes, well,
And that is why I told the viewers that as we are viewing now, as we are having this discussion, the kings and the queens of Africa currently, they are viewing this program because it is a very important program whereby reconnection is a key.
Yes, it is.
Reconnection is a key. Even if you are anywhere in this planet, the only persons who are not connected together are Africans. So maybe simply because we don't know whom we are, right? We don't know whom we are. That's why we are not connected to each other.
True, and the
Right?
universe.
And
The universe.
the universe.
Before, as we were on the subject of religion, tell us a bit. I know you mentioned Islam and Christianity a lot during your presentation, but tell us a bit, give us some details on the other cultural practices.
Okay, other cultural practices when it comes to beliefs. For example, we believe that traditionally the king is the person whom everybody respects and gives, and is the person who interprets ancestral communication. And this is the when the ancestors speak, there is a superior being. The superior being, that is God, the Almighty. There was that communication channel whereby it comes to the king who is ordained. So he's the one who guides the entire empire or kingdom, that this is what is supposed to be done, this and this and this. So that belief alone gave us, had given people some insight on whom they believe in, right? So until afterwards, the practices, traditional practices, some people have abandoned simply because they call those ones witchcraft, right? So when I say, when you hear the term witch, what comes to your mind? It's something negative, right? So meaning everything that was practiced traditionally is more of negative because it is called witch, right? It is witch. So that's why some of the things were pushed aside that were traditionally practiced due to the influence of other cultures.
But I hope some of those cultures have survived.
Yes, they are surviving. So
They are surviving. He doesn't want to
yeah, they are surviving,
They're surviving.
right? And when you look at this, that's why we are focusing at how do we integrate modernization into our cultures, cultural practices, right? And that was coming after the entire history. Then we now look forward, because once we understand who are we as Africans, then now we bring on board where are we now, and where do we want to go as Africans, because the main point is that we should be linked together. Now, when we link together, when we are bonded together, we are able to communicate using the understandable language. When I speak when I talk about the understandable language, it's not about Swahili or Creole or no. I'm talking about what you understand as African. You can communicate to an African because you understand each other very well. But right now, Africans don't understand each other because they don't know whom they are. You get it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that is where the benchmark is. Once we understand whom we are, then we can understand where we are going. And how can that come on board? That one can only come on board when we get in one bond, when we reconnect with each other. So the focus at this is that African kings and queens who are in Africa, they have formed African Kingdom Federation, right? So which federation is reconnecting each other, bringing everybody on board, right? So looking at the Central African kingdoms, we had South civilization, we had that was 16th century, and then after that Kanem Bonu Empire, Kingdom of Congo, which is now Democratic Republic of Congo, but it is divided into two. And then in the modern we had Sultane of Bugirimi Luba. So we had the Kingdom of Ndogo, Kingdom of Matamba, Wadai Empire, Lunda Empire, Kuba Kingdom, whereby in Central Africa we have countries Angola, Cameroon, that was after colonization. Angola, Cameroon, Central Republic, African Republic, Chad, Democratic Republic of Congo, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Sao Tome. So those are the Central African countries. So the trade that I talked about earlier on is the one that influenced. So the trade itself started in East Africa when the Arabs came to Africa. They started when they were following Red Sea along that coastal areas. That's where they started the trade, and that gave pressure to internal practices to change it completely, right? So they had ivory that they took from East Africa. There was that pressure, and then they had other things that they carried away, that is gold, diamond, and many things. That was during that time. So after that, colonization came in that demarcated Africa to say, if you want to cross here, you get to get a passport. If you want to go the other side, you get to get a passport. Mm-hmm. Right? That is now after colonization. So
but what about this Berlin Conference? What happened to the straddling? Didn't they split up kingdoms, and what happened when these demarcations were put in place?
Yeah, so based on the pressure that they had after demarcating to say, okay, this is where, so now the kingdoms could not move to one direction. You'll find that one kingdom might split because the border has passed in between, might split and go the other side, and that's why you'll find the one tribe might be in this country and then another tribe in the other country. But how did they split after the colonization, demarcation?
Dion keep dancing around the Berlin Conference. Some people might not understand that this is where the European colonizers came together and say, well, look, I gonna milk this part of Africa and you gonna milk the part and you gonna milk the part, and they eat it. So it don't, let's talk it like if it's we sat down and say, well, we're gonna divide up ourselves and you're gonna call yourself Kenya and I'm gonna say I'm like Uganda. That totally wasn't it. Because there might be some immature minds who don't know the origin of the Berlin Conference. They might not know what we mean when we talk about a Berlin Conference. So we wanted to be as part of this 57 liberation, must be explicitly clear that that is where, and even on today, and if you check, for instance, all the countries of in that make up Central Africa, most of them, the dollar is franc. We didn't get to talk about economics at all.
No.
Because I wanted I wanted us to.
We will have other time. Certainly.
Yes, because we're having no discussion if economics is not included.
Exactly.
Because that's where we need to put our focus.
Okay. So I that was what I was going to come up later down.
But we can have another discussion because we only have a few minutes.
We
more.
A few seconds.
We certainly
Right, yeah.
need
Okay,
to
now
have
let me
another
we will have you back.
Yeah, if I can give this as a hint towards what she was asking, because for her to go back without understanding, or else the viewers might also want to. So what about now on economic part? Because now we are living on a monetary economy. So how are we going to link up and all that? You know, right? So that is why earlier on, as I said, the kings and the queens are listening.
Yes.
Now the outcomes, the presentation is going to give us a way forward at the end, right? Based on our discussion that we have always gone along, particularly me and the kings of Africa. So we are trying to, the team has established African Kingdom Federation, and then we have Ateker International Development Organization. So, which is dealing purely on economic part of it, of those kings. So everybody is there. Now, when you find that, when we, for example, if we have rice in Guyana, we can have some other things from Africa being connected direct. And how can that come if we don't unite? Once we come together and start speaking one, then all that can come up. So, based on our discussion, and I know Her Majesty Imperial Majesty Queen Sheba Deborah the Third is listening right now, and Royal Majesty King Bugane, Embo Kingdom, Her Majesty Queen Genevieve Mezo Taka, that is in Cameroon, Her Majesty Queen Alomenu the Second of Vakpo, His Royal Majesty King Gosi Kwadu Machaka. We have His Royal Majesty Gozi Bakong Molefe, King Gozi Montoeli. We have Queen Gosi Gadi. We have King Gozebo the Third Bakolokwe. We have Nana Abena Ansaka. We have His Royal Majesty Togbe Osei the Third We have Kabaka Ronald Mwenda Mutebi, the second. We have Papa Augustine Osuban Emormor of Teso, and others who are listening right now. We have formed an organization, Atekere International Organization, that is looking forward to reconnect with the rest of Africans across the world on economic, social, and other activities. And I urge you, everybody, all the teams, all the African groups in Guyana, please come together and form one block. Let a team form one block and then reconnect. This is now an opportunity whereby we have the link. And recently, AIDO, which is Atekere International Organization, had a plan to have a conference in Ghana, but due to COVID, it couldn't happen, and of which that would have been an opportunity for one or two or whoever is able can reach and attend the conference, and or else at a certain point we can lobby for the conference to be conducted in Guyana.
Now, time has caught up with us, but
yes,
we are going to invite you again so that we can continue the discussion, and so that we can, this whole business of reconnecting can
yes,
be on the major focus of our
yes,
next
it should
discussion,
be.
right? I want to thank you, and I appreciate the fact that the kings and queens and princesses are
Yes,
listening in Africa.
special greetings.
Yeah, we send
Special
our greetings
greetings.
to you, and we're glad that you're seeking this reconnection. We want to thank
Yes, I love it.
Channel 9 for giving us this opportunity. Wazira, I want to thank you for being here too.
Welcome.
And
I'm happy to be
certainly we will inform you when the next program is going to be. So
Thank you.
listen out. We will have the doctor here again to continue these discussions. To the people out there, it's been a pleasure being with you. Do have a blessed evening.
thank you.